Good evening, sir. Today's second article is on targeting Hezbollah. Israel and the Shia militia should not risk a wider war by engaging in targeted attacks. So, the Israel and the Shia militia meaning a military force raised for the civil population. So the Israelis and Shia military force raised for the civil population had not should not risk a wider war by engaging the targeted attacks. So let's start. The Israeli attacks on Hezbollah targets in southern Lebanon following what is called cross-border fires mark a significant escalation in the crisis that has been building up along the border in recent years. So the Israel attacks on Hezbollah targets the southern Lebanon, and the following, which is called cross-border fires, are significant escalations, means a rapid increase or a rise. So, the significant rapid increase or rise in the crisis that has been building up along the border in recent years. Hezbollah, a Shia militia political party in Lebanon and Israel, which have fought two wars before, have been observing a tenuous ceasefire for 14 years. So the Hezbollah, a Shia militia and also a political party in Lebanon, the Israel has fought two wars before and have been observing the tenuous means very weak or slight or insustainable or thin or slender. So the unsustainable ceasefire for 14 years. Tensions began after Israel's targeting of Iranian weapons and supplies with Syria. So the tensions began after the Israel have targeted the Iranian weapons and the supplies within Syria. Israel fears that Iranian supplies to Hezbollah via Syria, where the Shia militias fought alongside regime fighters against rebels and Sunni jihadists, would leave them stronger, enhancing Israel's security challenges in the northern border. So, the Israel fear was whether the Iranian supplies of weapons to Hezbollah and Syria, where the Shia militia fought all the wars with the weapons they have given, and also against rebels and Sunni jihadists, would have been stronger, and enhancing Israel's security challenges in the northern border. In July, a Hezbollah commander was killed in an Israeli raid in Syria, for which the group has vowed retaliation. So, uh, in July, Hezbollah commander was killed in an Israel raid in Syria, and the group have taken swift of retaliation, meaning have taken sword for the action of returning a military attack on them, how they did for the Hezbollah commander. Since then, there have been attempts to target troops on Israel's border with Lebanon and Syria, according to Israel. In Tuesday's attack, Israel targeted an observation post which the Israel Defense Force claimed was used by Hezbollah for intelligence collection. So, on Tuesday, the Israel targeted on the observation post in which Israel Defense Force claimed that was the Hezbollah's intelligence collection. The raid at a time when Israel was carrying out an air campaign in Gaza shows the growing appetite of the newly formed unity government of Netanyahu under fire at home over its handling of the COVID-19 crisis. for war is a means to address the simmering border problems. So, the raid, which was taken at the time when Israel was carrying out an air camping in Gaza, have a growing appetite of newly formed unity government of Netanyahu under fire at home over its handling over the COVID-19 crisis for war is as means to address the boil gentility or stew borders problems. Hezbollah has been a tough target for the Israel, and in 2000, after 18 years of occupation of southern Lebanon, Israel were forced to withdraw mainly due to the fighting of Hezbollah. And in 2006, Israel invaded Lebanon, aimed to destroy Hezbollah military capabilities. But after a month of Israel aerial and land attacks, even on the day of the ceasefire, Hezbollah fired hundreds of short-range rockets in the northern Israel. So after the month of Israel aerial and land attacks on the day of temporary suspension of fight and truce, Hezbollah fired hundreds of short range rockets on the northern Israel, which was not good. Ever since, both sides have been wary of another open conflict. Israel, which has bombed Gaza several times since its 2005 withdrawal from the Strip, had been careful when it came to Hezbollah. So, there were many bomb blasts which was kept by the Israel to the Gaza in 2000 because of the 2005 withdrawal from the Strip very carefully when it comes to the talk of Hezbollah. The militants on the other side turned their focus to capacity building after the 2006 war and since 2011 the civil war in Syria. So the militants have focused on the capacity building of the 2006 to 2007 on the Syria civil war in Syria. The Baathist Syria has been a vital link between Hezbollah and Iran ever since the group was founded in the early 1980s. So the Baathist Syria has been a very crucial link between Hezbollah and Iran, and a group was founded in the early 1980s. Mr. Assad has survived a civil war, and Iran has substantially increased its footprints in Syria, bolstering the Iran-Syria Hezbollah axis. So the Mr. Assad have survived, means came out of the civil war. He was fine, he was rescued, and Iran has substantially increased the footprint in Syria and the bolstering support strength of the Iran-Syria Hezbollah axis. Israel sees the axis as a growing security challenge and hence started the bombing operations in Syria and risking another conflict with Hezbollah. The past 2 years suggest that it would not be easy for Israel, despite its military might, to defeat the battle-hardened Hezbollah fighters at their base. So it may be difficult for the Israel. And Hezbollah on the other side might resist an Israel attack but risks pulling Lebanon, already battling on economic crisis, political instability, and the after effects of the Beirut blast, into a wider war. So maybe the Hezbollah won't be ready for this war but push the Lebanon forward, even though they have so many economic crisis, political instability, and after effects of Beirut blast. Both sides should avert such an outcome and stick to the ceasefire. So today's second article is about the Hezbollah and Israel attacks between both of them and what are going on, what are the effects, how enemies are they both, and what is the condition of both cities, and what are they going to do, maybe what they are going to do. Thank you.